When I was in 2nd grade, my grandma picked me up after school one day and asked, "What did you learn today?" I said, "We learned how to make babies." Okay, that's interesting. How do you make babies? It's simple, I said. You just change the Y to an I and add ES. Fellow Toastmasters, I have many fond memories from my childhood of my grandma. Or Lola, as we called her. Lola means grandma in Filipino. And today I'd like to share with you some of my favorites, specifically in the areas of her superstitions, the way that she entertained us, and her cooking. My first memory of my grandma has to do with her superstitious beliefs. She had many of these. For example, it was bad luck if you stepped over somebody who was sitting on the floor, or it was bad luck if you left your house right after somebody sneezed. Or my favorite one, if you had a bad dream and then told someone about it, it would come true, unless you washed your hair first. Now, as ridiculous as that sounds, I actually follow this superstition because it's so easy to do. I mean, I already shower every day. Well, almost every day. So I figure better safe than sorry. But for my grandma growing up, it was actually a lot harder to follow this rule. Where she came from, you couldn't just hop in a shower. You actually had to hike all the way to the edge of her village and bathe in the river. Now that was in the 1930s. I actually had a chance to visit my grandma's village in 2013, and they have modernized a bit. Today their idea of a shower is taking a hose, filling up a bucket with cold water, and dumping it on your head. That's not a joke. So I have this theory that maybe this superstition was started by Filipino mothers who were just looking for a way to convince their children to bathe every once in a while. I mean, given the choice between a bucket of cold water and seeing Freddy Krueger come to life and hunt me down while trying to take a math test I didn't study for with no pants on, I'm going with the bucket of water. The second thing I remember about Lola was the way that she used to entertain us. Now, her house was kind of a boring place for my sister and I. We didn't have any of our toys there, none of our friends lived nearby. So to keep us entertained, she used the one activity that entertained her: gambling. Yes, my grandmother loved to gamble. Even in her later years, it didn't matter how tired she was, if she had just gotten out of the hospital, you mentioned the words Thunder Valley, she perked right up. She was ready to go out the door. So as kids, she taught us how to gamble. We started out with bingo, simple game that we already knew how to play, but when we played with Lola, we played for money. She had this gigantic glass jar filled with change, and we would use pennies to mark our bingo card. Whoever won the game got to keep all the pennies. From bingo, we moved on to blackjack. Yep, Lola would play the house's hand, and we would bet against her. I remember how thrilling it was watching her deal each card one at a time, teaching us when to hit, when to stay. Queen, ace, oh, that's a blackjack! She was always cheering us on. Now, this isn't a game you see a lot of 10-year-olds playing around the schoolyard, but we loved it. The third and final thing that I remember about Lola was the food that she cooked. Not because it was particularly good, but because it was so strange. For a kid who was raised on hamburgers and SpaghettiOs, Filipino cuisine took a little getting used to. For example, whenever she cooked fish, she always served it with the head intact. Eyes staring right back at you. They say the eyes are the window to the soul, but when it comes to my food, I prefer to keep that window shut. Another dish that she enjoyed was something called pig's feet. Now, I didn't figure out until years later that this was just her way of saying, through her thick Filipino accent, pig's feet. Yeah, pig's feet. My favorite food. I think it's pretty gross, personally. But the most interesting dish that she prepared is something called dinuguan. Have you ever tried dinuguan? Anybody? Well, dinuguan is a pork dish, stewed in a black sauce, served with rice. And because of its dark color, it has this nickname, chocolate meat. I remember the first time Lola offered me chocolate meat. I'm thinking, I found a loophole. I'm getting dessert for dinner. I take my first bite. Tastes nothing like chocolate. It's tangy, a little bit bitter, not sweet at all. What a disappointment. But the worst part was when I found out that the main ingredient that gives dinuguan its characteristic dark color is pig's blood. Now, excuse me for being obtuse, but I don't understand how you call something chocolate meat that doesn't really have any chocolate in it and is actually made out of blood. I mean, that'd be like me offering to sell you a purebred Labrador Retriever, only to reveal that it's not technically 100% purebred, and actually it's a goldfish. In conclusion, the things I remember about my grandma are her funny superstitions, the way that she entertained us with her love of gambling, and for introducing me to traditional Filipino foods. If she were still alive today, listening to this speech, I'm sure she would be thinking one thing. We are so close to Thunder Valley. Let's go! Mr. Toastmaster.